Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to the This Week in Bitcoin show. Today is August the 30th, 2019. Strong hand, be a unique beast, value your wealth in Bitcoin. Halving hype. We'll talk about the halving a little bit. Unconfiscatable. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Offended by selling in motion. 5-digit round. Best guest in the space. Yeah, I had to say a lot of sayings because we've got one of the best guests in the space coming to you right now. Ansel Lindner is back on the show, one-on-one with Adam Meister to talk about this week in Bitcoin, this year in Bitcoin, this decade in Bitcoin. Welcome back to the show, Ansel.
Thanks, Adam. Pleasure to be here, sir.
Oh, great. Good to hear you. Glad the sound is working awesome. Okay, let's start off with some observations I've made lately. I've noticed lately. Are there new people actually coming to the space? who is buying Bitcoin right now? Who's buying? Because I don't notice. There don't seem to be a lot of newbies, and a lot of the altcoin people seem to have disappeared.
Yeah, the altcoins are definitely have gone through a culling, and I think that will continue. But I don't see really very many new people coming in. If you look at the volumes from most exchanges out there, it's just very, very low. And that's one reason why I have been calling for a steeper pullback in the price for a long time, because it didn't. I wasn't seeing that volume. I wasn't seeing the pickup in interest. If you go to Google Trends and you look for search terms of Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin, everything is down in the dumps. It's really at the mid 2018 levels. So there is not a lot of interest coming in. Of course, there are going to be different people this round. So instead of, maybe we got some degen gamblers that were buying the ICOs and things like that in 2016 and 17. We're going to see more professionals, and maybe they're buying OTC, maybe they're buying on CME and playing with the futures there, because we have seen a slight pickup in the CME volumes. But yeah, I think it's going to be a different brand or a different generation of people coming in. But right now, yeah, I don't see a lot of new people.
Now, I don't want to freak anyone out here because I've got a strong hand. I know long-term everything is cool, but I've been thinking lately that the situation that we're in right now kind of reminds me of 2015, except that the price went up for some reason. What did bring the price up from $3,000? And someone had to be buying. Something had to have been going on.
Well, I've been looking at some of the charts. Everyone is always making all these comparisons to the bull market starting in 2015 and that, we're going to be at this price by this time. And I just think it's going to be different this time. If you go back to 2015 with Bitcoin XT and some of the scaling FUD that was around that time, just kicking off when the bull market was starting. So if you bring that to today, that would be like the Bitcoin XT thing starting this March or something like that. So you can see if there was a scaling debate that started this last March, it might have pushed the cycle longer. Right. So we had this initial pump right here this year, in the middle of this year, where we would have been talking about Bitcoin XT. So it's a little bit different this time. I think we can do our timings off the halvenings. And I know you talk about 2020 strong hands and all that. So yeah, I think that's the underwriting cycle here. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves on the price, and we're just going to go back and find support. We need to find buyers and entice some more people at lower prices. That's all you can say.
So your hand is real strong. You're prepared for the worst. You're not going to get freaked out if you see it go down to $7,000 or anything like that. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen, people, but yeah, you never know what can happen. All right, and I do think it's very interesting that you point out the scaling FUD happened in 2015 around the equivalent of March or whatever. And perhaps if it had not happened starting then the price would have gone up more in 2015 than it had. So I mean, there's different ways of looking at it, and you're right. I guess history doesn't repeat; history rhymes. But again, we're one day closer to having. I do think we will have a positive lead up as we get closer to having. So having isn't priced in yet, is it?
Oh no, I don't think having can be priced in, especially the after effects. Like we know, we can make our own mental models for how we will behave after the halving, but we can't understand what that kind of news cycle will drive in its own right. So, who was it? Blake? What's his last name? Blake from WCN.
Blake Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah, Blake Anderson, and he introduced me to this idea of a deflationary spiral in Bitcoin, and I do believe that. So when the halving happens, it's a reinforcing cycle on itself, and the price just keeps going up. Now, I just want to go back real quick to that the Bitcoin XT and the scaling debate thing back in 2015. You can see we might have hit the all-time high in mid 2017 instead of at the end of 2017. So there's all these different little things that can go wrong, and the price, I believe the price, I know you don't believe this, Adam, but I think the price is the most important thing. It reinforces what's happening here. And so
I think the price can be said to be one of the most important marketing tools. It creates FOMO. It gets new people into the space. I think it expands the interest in Bitcoin. Definitely. But no, go on.
Yeah, and it also gives room. It also gives room for more economic activity, right? There's going to be more economic activity at $1 trillion market cap than there is at $100 billion market cap. So I think that the price really is the driver here, and we don't know what this cycle is going to look like. It's going to look something like the last cycle, and it's going to all revolve around the halving. So we can be sure about that.
Okay, now you're talking about increased economic activity with price. Let's talk about economic activity within the space. People are innovating with the Lightning Network, building things with the Lightning Network, and people use Bitcoin to preserve their wealth, to get money out of dangerous situations. Compared with altcoins, well, excluding Ethereum, that's I don't think the altcoins are used for any economic activity other than speculation, and maybe the privacy ones for privacy activities. But we're getting for years now. We've been talking about the financialization of Bitcoin. The big boys coming in. Bakkt is coming in. Bakkt will actually start in September. Will we see any noticeable difference in price? What are your thoughts on the financialization of Bitcoin, Bakkt coming in, other organizations possibly coming in?
Well, I think Bakkt could, the launch of Bakkt's products could signify some sort of bottom in the price, an uptick in interest overall, but we won't notice like an immediate effect or anything. It's not going to pump 100% in a week. So it could mark like a nice flat bottom, and we start our next bull run from there. And that would be nice to start from, say, this ballpark of price instead of all the way down at the 3,000 area. So, and Lightning Network, I wanted to talk about that. So you're talking about economic activity, specifically in the Lightning Network and other places. We don't know exactly what's going on there, right? Because a lot of the channels are private. A lot of the nodes are private. We do know some of the download numbers for the Lightning wallets, and I've been looking at some of those. So it's at least 30,000 mobile wallets out there. And if you look at the node numbers, like on 1ml.com, some of these websites that track the nodes, it looks like there's only 8,000 nodes or 9,000 nodes, but there's many, many tens of thousands of wallets out there. I know Zap desktop application or client has over 25,000 downloads. So there is a lot of nodes out there that we don't see and we don't know about. How much economic activity there is there right now, I don't know, but I know it's a lot higher than we can see looking at those statistic websites.
Well, I just learned something. How many wallets are out there? Lightning wallets have been downloaded, and where do you get that info from?
I just looked at the Android numbers. So if you
Okay.
go and look at the Android Play Store, there's several wallets with 10,000 downloads and several more with 5,000. So maybe not that. Maybe there's crossover there, right? I did a little segment on my show about this. So there could be, even if you, I think the margin of error I gave was 50%. So there's a 50% overlap with all of these wallets. It was still like 30,000 mobile wallets. And that's not including iOS. Like I didn't even look at any of the iOS numbers. So it could be double that.
Wow. And check out Ansel. His links are linked to below. Everyone pound that like button. I'm learning here. This is good. Always be learning, people. And what was that 1ML site? I think I've linked to that thing before, but I just want to make sure I get it right this time. What you said there was another site?
Yeah, it's 1ml.com.
Just the number 1ML or?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think
the number one and then ML. And then there's another one that's bitcoinvisuals.com.
That one
that has some good lightning charts.
Okay, okay. Check those out, people. Check those out. Always be learning. Okay, so you talked about 2015 beforehand, and there was some. Well, there was all sorts of FUD flying around. The most, I guess, devastating type of FUD is it can be, in theory, because they're not. Technically, there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin, but socially, you can weave some stories into Bitcoin that could create enough of a situation where people would want to fork off and create another Bitcoin. And again, it would fail, obviously, as Bcash has in the past. But these situations, as we have lived through before, can be quite, they can slow down everything, get everybody's attention, take everybody's eye off the ball. In the long run, we all ended up with some free Bcash. Yeah. But if we were during the 2016, 2017 parts of it, there were parts that were disturbing. Now, something that's been going on lately is if people complaining are talking about is the distribution of Bitcoin fair? Fair distribution of Bitcoin. And I have commented on this numerous times. Anyone can buy Bitcoin now. So I don't know why anyone's complaining about the distribution, that there's some people with a lot of it. If you want a lot of it, go get it. I mean, go buy it. It's still cheap compared to what it's going to be. But you've talked about this situation on your show, actually. Your thoughts on distribution of Bitcoin FUD, what's behind it? Will it even matter?
Oh, what's behind it? I'm not sure exactly what's behind it. I mean, socialism is behind it mostly so people that are more socialist, they want to have, no private property, or this guy has too much, we need to redistribute his wealth and things like that. So I think that's kind of what's behind it. I did talk about this Dan Held and Vinny Lingham debate on my show. I mean, you know my kind of back history with Vinny, because I was on the show when he popped in to your show and was talking about, sell your Bitcoins. And that was at $900, right? So it was pretty crazy.
That was March the 17th, 2017. Just a reminder, everyone, check that out on the archives, one of the best shows ever on this channel. But continue, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what his political philosophy is, but it's probably something in that ballpark. And is distribution fair? Well, I think that, of course, it is fair. It can't be any other way. The only way that it could be different is if you take Bitcoins with people or from people with a gun and redistribute it somehow. It's been open to buy for anybody. Anybody can download a wallet or do earn Bitcoin, sell goods or services for Bitcoin. So there is no other way that it could be. So it has to be fair. It's like in a free market, this world is the best of all possible worlds. There's that, you can't imagine a different world that's better than this, because if you believe in free markets, we've ended up here because voluntary exchange and everybody's doing their best that they can and things like that. So this is the best possible world, the best possible distribution at this moment in time. Now going forward, I think that it will get better, right? It will definitely get better, or quote unquote, it'll get more equal, okay? Because in a free market, the income disparity or whatever it's called is the least People need to earn what people need to produce as much as they spend. If they don't do that, they have a negative cash flow and the money leaks out. Now, in the system we have with fiat, they just print the difference, or they have some sort of lobbying effort and they get closer to the source of inflation. In Bitcoin, you can't do that. So you have to produce to maintain your level of wealth. You must produce as much as you spend. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. I do want to say in natural free markets where there's no force, it's just the way it is that wealth does accumulate at the top. I mean, you can't tell people don't be successful. I mean, there's always going to be like 20% of the people who are going to be very successful, trying really hard, and you can't stop them from keep on accumulating wealth. And it's not just because they're doing well doesn't mean you can't do well. I think people and equality, it does. If equality happens naturally, that's great. But if it doesn't, well, then it doesn't. It doesn't have to be forced upon everything. And I think we're living in a world today where a lot of people think, well, we have to force equality onto people, and that means stealing from people, and that is the wrong. Stealing from people is wrong. Now, let's talk about. Oh yes, please.
Yeah, and stealing and social programs like that result in more inequality. Yes. So the only way, or the way to get the best level or the least inequality in wealth is through the free market. And yes, you're right. Some people will produce really valuable products or services, and they will get rewarded for that. And you want that to happen because then the guys towards the bottom, they have something to shoot for, right? Because if they come up with a good idea, they can also make it up there. And that's what you want. You want good, valuable products and services to be rewarded. And if you try to do socialism, it actually gets more unequal.
Pound that like button, people. We're talking about getting into mainstream society here for a second. I want to hear your thoughts on universal basic income. Was that something we've been hearing about lately? And it creeps into the Bitcoin space. People have brought it up to me. I bring it up on my Saturday show. So I got you on. Why not hear your thoughts on UBI?
Well, I mean, from a actual ideological perspective, I don't like it. I don't think it works. It just makes things worse. But like a political perspective, from an applied political perspective in the United States, I kind of like it because it'll just system, it'll make the system crash faster. And I like that because it'll allow a speculative attack onto the US dollar more easily, because I will put all of my $1,000 right into Bitcoin every single month. And so, from a, like I said, from a technical, ideological perspective, I don't like it. But from an implied perspective at this point, I think it will help the system collapse faster.
All right. So let's talk about the current economic situation in the world. Where do you think we're going? And what are your thoughts on gold? And is Bitcoin living gold's dream? That's one of my sayings.
Well, I think that Bitcoin is the monetary activism that gold bugs always dreamed of. So that's one of my things I've tweeted out quite a bit. I think gold does have one or two last hurrahs in it. It's definitely doing well right now. And I've said for a long time that the government might need to go back to a gold standard just to fend off Bitcoin. Because it's harder money than fiat, and they own all the gold. So they won't have a big problem going back to gold, where they will have a huge problem going to letting Bitcoin succeed. So to fend off Bitcoin, they might have to go back to a gold standard. And if that happens, yes, it will go up in value, maybe 5 to 10x from here. But eventually Bitcoin will surpass its gold's market cap and take gold's place.
You really think the government's going to care about Bitcoin anytime soon? I don't. I see it's just a blip on their radar right now. They seem to be into other activities.
Well, it depends how bad it gets. Some governments might, and there's always that thing where, once that first central bank or first government starts buying Bitcoin, it's going to be a domino effect to everybody else. So Yeah, I think probably not. Probably won't happen for a decade, but things can go awry really quick.
When, we're having a little bit of a technical here. When do you see Bitcoin?
No.
Oh wait, you hear me all right? Wait a second.
Yep,
Okay,
you're a
good.
little bit jumpy.
Yeah, it's a connection. But we can keep going. Don't worry, they can hear us. Safe haven, Bitcoin as a safe haven. I don't think people have major players haven't woken up to it yet. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
Yes, it's my safe haven, right? it's a lot of people's safe haven, and once you learn about Bitcoin and you get into it more, so if you think about it, like 1% of the world, it's safe haven for 1% of the world right now, and maybe next year 2%, and 5 years down the road maybe 10% of the world. So yeah, it is a safe haven. It will continue to grow. But gold is definitely the dominant safe haven, or the U.S. dollar, of course. So
Yeah. That's the point I was getting at. The way I'm seeing things now, the people who think the economy is about to go down the tubes, it's helped pump up the gold price, but it definitely has not affected the Bitcoin price. So as of right now, the majority of people who want safe haven are running toward the dollar and especially gold right now. And not to Bitcoin is my point. So I'm curious to know when that is actually going to happen. It's probably going to take just time for younger people to get older, and there was one question, a bigger question. Where do you see the economy this year? The overall economy? Are you one of those guys that's like, yeah, now it's finally happening. The falling apart, it's coming. I'm not one of those guys, but what do you think?
Well, I was one of those guys for a very long time. I think just in the last maybe 3 years, I've started. I've looked at things more instead of, hey, this is it. It's happening. It's happening. I'm looking at it more like that's another chink. That's another chink. That's another chink. And pretty soon, it's going to happen. But you just need to recognize the signs. And you don't want to, if you're waiting for this to really happen and it's going to collapse next month. You bite off on these things like the QAnon and some of the other I don't know. There's a lot of gold bugs that got wrapped up into that. They get up into a lot of conspiracy theories. So I've tried to take a step back and appreciate both sides of the argument here. But for the next year, we'll probably keep going down. I think the dollar is actually going to get stronger relative to other currencies, weaker against gold, silver, and Bitcoin. So I'm kind of in the middle there. I'm not a dollar bull or a dollar bear. I think China is going to have major issues. For a long time, people were saying, "Oh, China is going to be the savior of the world. They're going to be the U.S. of 1900." But it's turning out to not be that. I think that the Chinese Communist Party, their days are numbered. That's probably going to be a big event in the near future. So I think Asia, maybe Europe, will have harder times than the U.S., unfortunately.
That line about China there, I think it would be great if the Chinese Communist Party fell and they were under a non-authoritarian leadership. I don't exactly see how that's going to happen because they're authoritarian now. And if they see they're getting weaker, they will just lay the smackdown on whoever goes against them, which might happen in Hong Kong pretty soon. So how do you foresee, you do see that this ending there, the authoritarian style of leadership ending in China and something taking its place? And when would you expect something like that to happen? Because that would be huge. Well, that would be the biggest event on the planet. I mean, that would be huge.
Well, yeah, China has a bunch of dollar-denominated debt. And so they can't repay their loans by printing. They have to get dollars to repay these loans. And Hong Kong is like the entryway for dollars into China. That's one reason why they haven't really cracked down too hard, because they need Hong Kong and Hong Kong's trade relationships, because there's different trade relationships with Hong Kong versus mainland China. So they need those Hong Kong trade relationships to get dollars in, to pay their loans. If they don't do that, they'll have to default and their whole economy can crash overnight. They're also not allowing sympathetic protests. There's sympathetic protests from Chinese all around the world. I think it's like South America. There might have been one here in the US. There's something in Europe. But in China themselves, they're not allowing it. They're cracking down. So I think that there's different things around, little pieces of news that to me kind of signal that specifically the Chinese Communist Party, they're losing grip a little bit. They're losing grip. And that once that happens, that opens the door for revolt, and it can happen really quickly.
Yeah, well, I do hope they are brought down. It would be a tremendous change on the world scene. I think the world would become a positive place. I'm not holding my breath, but hey, we will see what happens. You did bring up something also before. Over the last 3 years, I think you said it was 3 years, that your attitude has kind of changed toward the doom scenarios. Has Bitcoin made you more of a positive person? Because I've had people tell me that Bitcoin has made them more of a positive outlook person, not to get into these doom holes and such.
Yeah, it definitely has. I've talked about that a few times, that you're depressed as a gold bug, because I'm coming from the gold bug side. I've always been into Austrian economics and money. But if you're a gold bug, yeah, man, you're just depressed and the government's holding you down, and then they're doing paper trading and your gold is never going to, you get into this cycle of depression. And once you get into Bitcoin, it does cure a lot of that. I also see things more inevitable, and there's more of a timeline. Like with this halving cycle, you can say, okay, well, it's going to go up maybe 10x every halving. And then you can just map that out. Like, where does it take over the world? Okay, it takes over the world in 12 years. So, it gives you a mental model that you can be a lot more optimistic about the future and the way it's going. With gold, it was just, total depression.
I got a big smile on my face. First of all, pound that like button. And the reason I got a smile on my face is because someone who was a gold bug basically said the same thing that you did. So this is a common theme. Gold bugs, if you're still down and out, if you're still suffering from a gold depression, learn about Bitcoin. You can create this schedule in your mind. It's not just up in the air like, one day it's going to happen. One day things are going to get better. You've got a halving schedule, and you can plan your celebrations around that. But there is some more clarity to Bitcoin, and there's definitely a much more positive vibe than the gold, the things you were saying. The government's keeping us down, the paper printing, blah blah blah. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that in Bitcoin. Bitcoin, this game is not rigged. Pound that like button. That's one of my sayings. But I mean, the gold bugs love the claim. They love talking about every game is rigged. The stock market's rigged. The gold is rigged. This is rigged. And I guess that's a feeling of helplessness there. At least it boosts that feeling of helplessness, and that's not a good realm to be in. But
there's also this air of cypherpunk, route around the problem. You don't. It's very active. It's very empowering to have this ethos, open source, route around the problem. Come and get it, come and take it, sort of thing. And that is missing a lot in the gold community, just because they've been beat down for 40 freaking years. Of course, these people, and they're getting older, right? So if you look at the revolutionary mindset of people, it's always the younger people, right? And so if you have the average age of a gold bug is 60, they're not going to be active. There's going to be no monetary activism there. But if you look at Bitcoin, the average age is 25 or 30. That's where this activism comes from, is the young people. There's a very spirit of, like I said, the cypherpunk, route around the problem, change the world sort of thing.
Awesome. In motion, baby. You're in motion with Bitcoin. Gold, not so much. But hey, I love this. Love we got to talk about that. Let's talk about altcoins real quick. Even though the price even though the price of Bitcoin's gone down in terms of fiat, it's still close to 70% dominance on the market cap chart. Where do you see? We've talked about things being cyclical. The last time Bitcoin went through the roof, the altcoins really went through the roof. Can we expect something like that to happen again?
I don't think so. That was a very unique situation, driven a lot by China. Actually, if you're familiar with China hustle, that type of environment of just Ponzi schemes everywhere, fake companies, fake projects, invest in this, invest in that. And so I think that was the source of a lot of this altcoin hysteria or mania. I don't think that is going to repeat itself. I do think altcoins have to bleed more, and there will be altcoins that survive for a decade's time, but they're not going to be billion-dollar projects. I would not fight Ethereum as much as I do now if it were only a billion-dollar market cap or maybe $100 million market cap, because then they can experiment in their own little corner. But it's just still overvalued. There's just too much overvalue in altcoins. And since Bitcoin is correlated with the altcoin sector, that's the only thing Bitcoin is correlated with, by the way, is other quote unquote digital assets. So as those crash in value, it's going to have a negative impact on Bitcoin, at least in the short term. We do see as altcoins crash, Bitcoin crashes less. So it has less of an impact on Bitcoin. But I think we'll just see this continue. And that's one reason why I thought that we were going to have a mini bear market, a pullback in price here, because the altcoins advanced too much and they needed to be put back in their place.
Very interesting take on all this. Do people, I still, despite being the Bitcoin Meister, people still ask me, it's just, they're trying to live a dream, I guess. They want their coin to be the next Bitcoin. What do you think of X coin? I mean, it's just in there. It seems like every week, at least one person asks me, what do you think? Why are they still asking? Do you still get questions like that? What do you think about some no-name coin? Or sometimes it's not even a no-name coin. I mean,
I don't get a ton of questions like that. I do get a ton of DMs and emails and things from ICO people, like they're launching some exchange, some tiny exchange somewhere. They're doing some sort of DeFi thing, or, you get a lot of those emails. You probably get the same thing. And it's just a bunch of scams. But other than that, like real people asking me, no, I don't get a lot of that.
Okay. Well, you're still getting that nonsense. We could talk about that nonsense spam. I get the same exact DMs, and it's clearly they're just sending it to everyone with a certain amount of followers, or because they don't. Why would I have any interest in an ICO in this? Why are guys even still doing that? They're stuck in 2017. First of all, I have no idea. Hey, by the way, you said the altcoin, and you talked about China and everything. If and this is a real long shot though. If China if the government were to fall, but everything still worked over there, just they'd get a new government and the people could live more freely. I think that would be very good for altcoins. I'm not saying that that's going to happen or anything like that, but newfound freedoms, people are free to make a lot of mistakes. Because right now in China, there's all sorts of rules against getting into Bitcoin and stuff, but people just find their ways around it. If those rules weren't there, I think they would even gamble more in some of the nonsense. I mean, you'd have Chinese entrepreneurs, so many of them, creating altcoins and who knows, ICOs and whatever the next thing is. So again, I agree that this altcoin right this year is not looking very good for altcoins. I wouldn't be surprised if something that we can't predict happens. Where they do zoom again when Bitcoin zooms again. But just wanted to bring that part up. Now, I wanted to read a quote from, who is this guy here? I don't know. It'll be linked to below. He says, when I got into Bitcoin, the only thing I was sure of was that I was late to the game. It was hundreds of dollars for one Bitcoin. So expensive. Clearly, the ship has sailed. It always feels that way at first. We're still early, and it's still cheap. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on such a comment, because I get people telling me all the time, like, I missed out, Adam. I missed out because I couldn't get it at $700. But I think people are going to look back that the price is in the 4 digits, and they're gonna long for the 4-digit realm. So what are your thoughts on that? It being early still.
It definitely is still early, but there's no other asset that you can get these returns, and at such low risk still. I mean, yeah, you might buy the top or something like that in some cycle, but you just wait 4 or 5 years and you're gonna 10x your money. So yeah, we definitely are early. And if you look at the market cap, I haven't looked in the last week or so, but it's about 200 billion. I think maybe down to 150 billion now. I mean, we're going to at least a $15 trillion market cap.
Whoa!
At least. I mean, it probably closer to $100 trillion market cap.
Well, I like to take these things in stages, steps, one step at a time. Right now, it is below 200 billion. I think I haven't looked either. It's like 175. But for me, the next step is a trillion. And to get to a trillion would be almost, I mean, it would be like $60,000 Bitcoin. I mean, that's incredible right there. So when you started, I mean, what number did you just say? 7 trillion or something like? You're talking about it being more than gold, basically.
Oh, definitely more than gold. Because when I value the eventual market cap of Bitcoin, I look at all of these store of value things. So you have to look at real estate. You have to look at bonds. You have to look at people investing in their pensions into the stock market and all of this stuff. So Bitcoin is going to get a huge hunk of all store of value in the world, not just currency. So currency is something like what? I think it's 60 trillion or something. So it's going to get most of that. And then you got to go into the other markets, other asset classes. It's going to get a lot of their value too. So who knows? You know, that 100 trillion guy on Twitter, that's no joke. It could easily get to that, maybe more.
So yeah, I value my time in halving. So I'm patient. I think our next step is 1 trillion, and maybe that'll be after the next halving, and then I don't know what the step is after 1 trillion. I can't even imagine it. I mean, 60,000 Bitcoin. That's very exciting. That's so I'm just I relish. I appreciate the moment. And I don't want to rush things, but yeah, if you get
more practical than I am,
you're super. That's like, I mean, it's good to map out the whole super long-term play, but my relative long-term is just like, let's get to a trillion. We're only at we've reached 200 billion a couple times. We'll get to a trillion. That'll be very exciting, and then we can talk about gold and it's surpassing gold and all of that. But again, there are logical reasons behind every number that you brought up. Because again, it's not just about money; it's about the entire wealth of the entire planet, which is over $250 billion in dollars. So I mean, yeah, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can happen, and that is why we go back to the tweet. That is why it is still early, people. It is very. We're still before the 2020 halving as of this video. No doubt there are people watching this video that are living after the 2024 halving. So you guys probably have a big old smile on your face. All right. Well, we're getting here toward the end of the show, Ansel. Any thoughts, anything you wanted to add? Again, he's linked to below, his podcast, his Twitter. Please follow him on Twitter and listen. His podcasts are great, original material. This is one of the names in the spaces that you need to know. Best guest in the space. I bring him to you here. He's got great guests also. What else is going on, Ansel?
Not much. Thank you for inviting me on. Something up. I live down in Florida now. Just moved down here about 6 months ago, and we have that hurricane coming our way. So I'm glad that I could get on to the show here. And it was tomorrow, Saturday, or something like that.
Wow. Yeah, dude. I totally forgot you had changed locations. You enjoying the good? You other than that weather event, you enjoying the weather?
Yep, I'm enjoying Florida. Gonna start a meetup down here. I think. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, dude. I actually had a guy on a couple of weeks ago. I'll put you in touch with him. He's like the blockchain guy of Florida that interacts with the government. He's a pretty nice guy.
Really?
I'll send you his info after the show. Yeah. I'll send you the show too. He was on with Ty Zen. It was a good show. Anyway, guys, check out Ansel below. Thank you so much for being on the show. Very good insight into just beyond Bitcoin type of stuff. That's why I love you having you on. Okay, everybody, pound that like button, bang that bell button. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, check out the links below. Shabbat Shalom. We do a new show here every day, new This Week in Bitcoin every Friday. So keep on coming back to disruptmeister.com. Follow me on Twitter at TechBalt, TECHBALT. See you guys later. Bye-bye.